and welcome. Anyone who's been to Merchant City Yoga on a Sunday knows how much I love catching up with everyone over a cup of my freshly brewed spiced chai. These Sunday chai sessions really bring everyone together. A true celebration of friendship, community and connection. And as these COVID restrictions continue, I want to try and capture some of that magic and share it with you at home. So I've invited some familiar faces from our MCY family to chat with me online over a cuppa. I'm affectionately calling them the chai sessions. Pop the kettle on, get yourself comfy and come and join us. Hey Matt.
Hey Judy, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. So I'm really delighted to welcome you to my chai session, and I'm probably dating our chai session now, excuse me, by saying I have my Christmas mug filled with chai here for our chat.
I'm also on the chai, but in Marvel mug, so.
Well, each to their own. So just for anyone who's listening who maybe doesn't know who you are one of our recent MCY graduates, our teacher training graduates, and to get the kind of the housekeeping bit out of the way early on, are hosting a handstand workshop with us in January, 22nd of January, 2:00.
That's right.
In the afternoon. And the reason I asked you to do that was, I mean, I know over the year or so that we've known each other, we've had a number of chats about handstanding and the art and the science of handstanding. So I thought it would be really nice just to kind of bring some of that chat to other people as well. So the first thing I wanted to ask was, what came first for you, Matt? The yoga practice or the handstanding practice?
I'll be quite honest and say I can't actually remember. I think they came about roughly the same time. When I started doing yoga, I was also doing a lot of strength training at the time, and I think it started as an extension of that, as kind of as part of my overall strength training, working towards doing handstand push-ups at the wall. I think I'd probably seen someone doing that on YouTube or something. Thought, oh, that looks cool. And I think that gradually progressed into how do you do a handstand away from the wall, you know? So I can't actually remember a certain inciting incident, but one thing led to another. And that happened to be about the same time that I started doing yoga as well. So the two sort of slowly started to feed into each other. And it just became this, I mean, I'll probably return to this, but it's kind of it's a puzzle when you start to figure out how to do a handstand. And the more you try, the more you discover how difficult it can be and all these little things you have to work out. So it just sort of fed itself into this debilitating obsession.
That's a very, very healthy interest, would we call it, rather than an obsession, because I certainly know within the yoga world, like, a handstand's a kind of funny one. So some teachers and kind of styles of practice, they just don't go anywhere near it at all. It's just not in the kind of yoga lexicon. And for other styles of yoga, it's become, I think, one of the kind of aspirational postures. The one that lots of people want to try and achieve, even though it might not be part of what you might think of as a more conventional yoga practice. Yeah.
I mean, I tend not to, in my own asana practice, I never usually use handstands as part of that. I kind of keep the two separate. And I think there's the image of the yoga teacher on Instagram doing handstands, and you know, you'll find plenty of pictures and video of me on Instagram doing handstands, but I very rarely will classify that as yoga. There'll not be a yoga hashtag. It's a separate discipline in a way, although obviously the yoga does involve handstands at certain points as well. But I think it can be quite an intimidating thing to present as the face of yoga. You know, sort of this is what you should aspire to as a yoga teacher. And especially because I think yoga teaching, yoga practice doesn't put enough emphasis on handstands to make that a feasible part of this is what yoga is about. So
Yeah.
it's not representative in either direction, really.
Yeah, because I mean, I do think there is a part of me thinks, like when you're talking about the discipline, there is something kind of that there are parallels, I think, between the discipline of a handstand practice, working out the elements, doing the work on the building blocks, trying to bring it all together, and coming back to that time and again, even when it doesn't work, even when you fail, if you like, or fall out of handstanding. So for me, that aspect of it has parallels to a yoga practice. We just keep turning up, we keep putting in the work. But the other side of it as well is like you're saying, that most yoga classes, just thinking about, from a kind of body point of view, rather than any kind of higher levels of practice, you're not really prepared in doing the work to then balance well upside down.
No. Once you go upside down, everything is literally taken upside down. Your whole proprioception, it throws off everything. So there are stages you need to go through. I mean, as I've mentioned to you, there's a yoga book. I've got quite an old one which talks about handstand and how to do it, and it literally just says put your hand on the floor and lift your legs over your head.
You mean it's not just that simple? That's not it.
It's a little trickier, but there are certainly areas of crossover between yoga and handstands, and I think if I'd have been deeper into my yoga practice before I started learning handstands, it would have come a lot easier than it did, in terms of just having body awareness and that sort of discipline, and also accepting where you are. There's been a lot of frustration in my handstand journey, which when you stop to think about it, it's not really that important to be able to do a handstand. So the degree to which I became frustrated myself and would beat myself up about my inability to do this ridiculous thing. And I think certainly the year I spent on teacher training has given me that perspective where I can accept where I am and accept my attempts and my failures. I've got a lot more patience with myself when working on it.
It's kind of funny though, because we all do that, don't we? Especially when those of us who are particularly attracted to quite a strong physical practice, we do get really caught up in it sometimes, and really frustrated when we can't do some completely ridiculous things like handstanding and leg behind head and some of the deeper back bend. When is that ever helpful? But it does. I think there's something about taking us beyond where we think we can go, and there is something about that aspirational quality to it as well. And given the fact that we're all human, I think there's actually something about being able to do something that's quite cool.
Absolutely. I mean, I think I've been quite disparaging about handstands thus far, but yeah, I do love them, and the amount of confidence it gives you to be able to do something that you didn't think you could do. I mean, I'm in my mid-40s now. I didn't really start seriously training this until I was 44. So, it's not something I've been able to do my entire life or something. And in fact, I was working on some training in the gym recently, and a guy came up to me and said, "It's really weird. I used to be able to do that when I was a kid, and I can't anymore." And I thought, well, no. The reason you can't is because you don't do it anymore. And so, I don't know. It does give you a lot of confidence, and it's a lot of enjoyment in putting the puzzle pieces together. So it's the sort of thing where you have to think about all elements of your body. It's all in your fingers and your hips, in your ribs and your shoulders, and right down to the feet. You have to think about all these elements and put them together in a situation where you're upside down and in a very precarious position. And there's nothing that brings you more into the moment than being upside down and trying to control your body there.
And trying to balance. And it is literally from the tips of the fingers to the tips of the toes. And it's almost like if you waggle your eyebrows too much, it knocks you off. But it's so true what you say about being able to do it. I think there's quite a few things come up in the practice. And the other one that springs to mind is, the roll through Chakrasana, the backward roll, that we could all do as kids without thinking twice about it. But then suddenly put yourself in an adult body, and I suspect more so with an adult head on your shoulders. It becomes virtually impossible. I mean, it's taken me such a long time. And I mean, I'm nowhere near balancing in the middle, so I'm actually hoping your workshop is going to work some magic there. But certainly heaps better than it was. I mean, I remember for a long time I couldn't even get my feet off the floor. It's like my legs are so heavy. Couldn't get the feet off the floor. And then now that I can get my feet off the floor, they're so heavy that trying to keep them still in space is just ridiculous. It feels quite ridiculous.
I know, it's difficult to find where they are in space as well. And one of the things that I struggled with for the longest time, and I talked to other wannabe hand balancers about this, was just the position of your pelvis while you're upside down. Finding that tilt in the pelvis is so difficult for some reason. Your brain will not accept it when you're upside down. So,
and presumably it's going to be different.
Let alone the legs.
Presumably it's going to be different for different folk as well, because like even standing upright, we all have a slightly different natural curve of the spine and going into the pelvis there as well. So it's not, we can't just be looking for the one shape, which makes it so tricky.
Much of it is in your head as well. Fear and it's not a natural position to be in. So your brain doesn't want you to go on your hands and take your legs above your head. So part of it is learning the confidence. That's one of the big things I want to work on in the workshop, is giving people the confidence to be able to attempt it when they go home. So, and part of that is physical drills to learn how to get out of handstand safely. Because once you can do that, that frees you up to try. You know?
I mean, certainly for me, that trying to come out safely, way harder, like trying to get my head out of the way just to do that. Not happening.
Secret there, cartwheels. So,
not happening.
Essentially, your safe exit from a handstand is a cartwheel. And that's something you can build up to. And, it doesn't have to be a gymnastic, acrobatic, perfect cartwheel. You don't have to come out of it and go,
That's like present.
Yes.
And so tell me a little bit more about like how you've progressed, because I think, have you worked with a couple of different handstand coaches and teachers?
Yeah, so I spent about, I'd say, 3 or 4 years throwing in a bit of handstands at the end of my gym sessions or after a yoga practice, and basically getting absolutely nowhere. So, you do 10, 15 minutes of just throwing yourself about the place or being up against the wall or whatever. And you just don't get very far with it. It's not very structured, it's not very disciplined, you don't have that guidance. So it was 2 years ago in 2019, I eventually signed up for a 12-week handstand course with Kirsty Grosset, also known as Garage Gym Girl, who's based in Canada, but is from Scotland originally. And that was fantastic. She took it right back to basics, and you're doing, I think it was 3 or 4 hour-long sessions every week.
Wow.
Of just handstand training. And I think for the first 2 weeks, you didn't even approach a handstand. It's all about body awareness, finding the line. So it's basically lying on the floor, a lot of it, and various drills to get the right parts of the body fired up. So before I did that, on a good day, before I did this course, I could do a handstand with really bad banana form for about 6 or 7 seconds, and that's after 3 or 4 years of trying to learn it myself. And these days I've just cracked the 40-second mark with a pretty straight line, so I'm pretty pleased with that.
That's pretty good, Matt.
So it's getting there, but you know, it's that's not to say that every attempt is a successful attempt. You know, the consistency itself is a skill. But yeah, but having that structured guidance and that structured program really helps you to progress. But it's also a matter of time and dedication.
Well, I was going to say, and also you had chosen at that point to give that your focus and time and attention, because you know, 4 hours a week, that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
You know, so it takes a bit of commitment and takes a bit of dedication as well. But I always think as well, you know, even when we're trying to balance on one leg, some days the balance is there and some days the balance is not. So that has to play out when we're trying to balance upside down as well.
Absolutely.
You know, balancing one leg, much more straightforward than balancing on 2 hands.
And again, all the head stuff comes into play. It's always back to the head stuff, isn't it? But you know, some days you're distracted and you can't quite get everything working harmoniously, and some days everything just flows from it. So, you know.
Yeah, and because I've seen a couple of your posts about it as well, and it struck me that once or twice you posted that it's actually the days that feel worst that give you your best. I'm going to say your best
not always,
result.
but yeah,
but
sometimes, yeah. Sometimes you can do all the prep and all the drills and work slowly and methodically, and just it's not happening. And other days you just hurl yourself into it and everything's fine. So, and I don't really get that with kind of other parts of yoga practice. It's much more, it's a bit more linear, I think. So like headstand, for example, which is, you know, some people use it as a preparatory thing for handstand. I never have bad days with that. It's, you know, once I learned to do a headstand, I could do a headstand, that's fine. But handstand, that's still an ongoing struggle daily. So,
yeah.
So I don't know.
That's funny. And are there any other ways that you feel that the handstanding practice, if we want to call it that, is feeding back into your yoga practice and your yoga teaching practice as well?
I think it's just that sort of greater body awareness, I think, and it's confidence as well in terms of trying things that might seem intimidating. You know, so yeah, as you know, recently I've been trying to work on Bhuja Padasana and things like that, and that's quite an intimidating pose at first, but you know, I do have that knowledge that I'm able to balance on my hands in certain positions, so you know, that's a good basis for going forward. And balance is a good thing generally, you know, especially as we get older, and you know, it's a good thing to work on your balance both ways up.
Yeah. And what do you think the most common, don't know, what would I say, misconception about handstanding or handstand practice is?
Misconception. You throw me that.
Maybe just that we all think we should be able to do it, that we all feel a bit entitled that we should be able to do it.
I don't know. I think maybe the thing that if you're practicing yoga, then eventually a handstand will come from that. And I think for some people it can. Some people are very gifted in that area. For me, it didn't come naturally at all. So it was something I had to focus on. But I think just it requires more work than you think, possibly, or more effort and more dedication than you think.
Yeah, that it's not just going to kind of come quite naturally out of some of the other posture work.
Yeah, I think it is very different. It's its own thing in a way.
Yeah, I think I would agree. And it takes, just a little bit of dedicated thought and practice as well.
But also it's really fun. So,
yeah, well, because that's what I was going to say. We've been having quite a serious chat here about handstanding, but chucking yourself upside down, it's good. But it's like, why? I think it's why a lot of us just keep wanting to do it. Like, you know, it is cool to catch that pose, although I do wonder on some of the kind of the social feeds if it's just like a split moment in time, that it was like, it wasn't really I'm hanging out up balanced up here, it was just like a lucky snap or a boost of.
Absolutely. There's a lot of that about.
A little bit of cynical there, but yeah, it is. It's great fun. So if people want to kind of start playing around with getting, what would be the first thing you suggested that they do? Clearly, apart from coming to your workshop.
Absolutely that.
Yeah, that kind of goes without saying.
I think one of the first things to do is to get comfortable with being upside down. So if you already have a headstand in your practice, for example, that's good. But also things like, I remember when I first started doing yoga, just doing forward folds was quite upsetting for me. And I think we forget that when we've been doing yoga for a long time. The first time you go into just a simple forward fold, all the blood rushes to your head, and you suddenly, you can start to panic.
Yeah.
But that, after a while, you get used to that. So spending time upside down, you can spend time at the wall. There's different ways of using the wall for handstands. So, for example, if you have your chest to the wall, that's good for working on your line.
Oh, but that's tricky and scary.
It is tricky.
Really scary.
Exactly. That's where you build your confidence.
Having, because I've tried that a few times.
Mm-hmm.
I remember chatting to a teacher, and she showed me a drill. So what she did was she put on a pair of socks, turned so that her chest and she was facing the wall, and was basically like sliding her feet up and down the wall.
Right.
I tried it. It was messy, wasn't pretty. Glad nobody was there. But yeah, I just found that whole, like, having been practicing, does not in a kind of very dedicated or focused way, but fairly consistent, against the wall and using all that, and very slowly building over time. Got really freaked out by facing the wall. Yeah. Really, felt really closed in and out of control, and completely lost any kind of awareness of where I was, and all I could think of was, or all I could hear was my mind screaming, "You're going to go over backwards." Yeah,
but the thing is that you don't have to have your chest right up close to the wall. You don't have to be nose to the wall.
Do you think that was my mistake? I was like,
possibly. I mean, that's eventually where you want to work up to, in a way. But you can start maybe leg length from the wall, so your legs at a right angle, the other leg straight up. Yeah. And that's a good position to find your balance, find your line.
Yeah.
And then the other way around is to do a handstand with your back to the wall, and that's good for practicing your kick-ups, but it's less good for finding your line and finding a point of balance, because your legs are going behind you. You'll end up in that banana shape. Yeah. So there's the idea is to get all the different elements of a handstand, work on them individually, so you can then bring them together at a certain point in the future. But don't try and do everything at once, I'd say. Don't start trying to learn a handstand by just coming to the middle of the floor, putting your hands down, throwing your legs up.
God, that's scary as well, isn't it? Doing it without any kind of safety net behind you.
But a big part of the discipline is learning to make your own safety net, by learning how to come out of it safely. And as I say, that gives you the freedom to attempt whatever you want to attempt.
Yeah. So I think my takeaway, Matt, from today is I'm going to start practicing my cartwheels.
Excellent.
Because that whole like lifting the hand that you're not happening. Cannot
pushing off the other hand. That's it.
Yeah, cannot wire my brain to get that happening at all. So maybe I'll just do cartwheels and start there.
Well, there will be an element of that at the workshop, and we can build up to the cartwheels too. So
good.
It'll be fun. This is playtime basically. So
Well, that's it, and I think that's why I was so keen to kind of pull it out and do a workshop dedicated to it, so that people get some good technical input, but also get the chance to try it out. And especially with some kind of feedback from you about how to do it a little bit better, because it's that pairing of fun and progress, isn't it, that we're looking for.
That's it.
Yeah, cool.
So I mean, I can't promise everyone will be able to go home and do a handstand immediately, but you'll have the tools to work on it yourself. So
magic, and that's all we can ask for.
Indeed.
Isn't it?
Right.
Matt, thank you so much for taking the time to
Thanks
have a little bit of
It's been a pleasure.
an upside down chat, and I'm really excited for your session in January.
Yes,
Fingers
me too.
crossed. First
Lovely
of
to see you
May.
there.
Yeah.
Great.
Thanks, Matt.
Fantastic. Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you enjoyed our chat. If you've got any questions, you can email me or find us on social media. And until we can return to our Sunday chai sessions in the studio, I'll see you here next time.